The Galactic Council chamber echoed with the hum of ancient machinery, a place where centuries of interstellar politics had unfolded. It was here that the collective decision of 1,000 species would be made, a decision that would change the trajectory of the galaxy forever. Ava Drake, the human diplomat, had stood before them countless times, weaving fragile peace on the embers of war, brokering alliances that saved entire civilizations from extinction. Her methods were precise, her words sharper than the weapons she kept Earth from deploying. Yet, her success had bred envy, and her brilliance had become a threat no one was willing to tolerate. The whispers had started quietly, moving like shadows between species who once viewed each other as enemies. Her influence was growing. Her ability to read through deception had cornered those who thrived on manipulation. The Kalari, the masters of legal technicalities, found their power eroded under her scrutiny. The Ventari, long the dominant economic force, saw their monopolies dissolve in the wake of her trade negotiations. Even the Phyrexian warlords, infamous for their aggression, had been bound by the accords she brokered. One by one, the pillars of the council had come to resent her. None of them had the courage to confront Earth directly, but together they devised a solution that would satisfy their fear without igniting war. A proposal surfaced, buried in the relic laws of the council's founding. It cited an ancient clause allowing for the enslavement of a diplomatic representative if they were found to have exceeded the permitted influence upon member states. A forgotten law, dismissed by most as a relic, now resurrected with surgical precision. The Kalari presented it as a mere procedural correction, arguing that Ava's disproportionate success constituted manipulation on a galactic scale. No species stood in her defense. The silence was deafening. The humans, deceived into attending a fabricated emergency on the fringes of known space, were absent from the vote. Ava stood alone. Species that once praised her brilliance now cast their votes in cold succession. The tally was unanimous. In that moment, Ava Drake was no longer a diplomat. She became property. Her collar was affixed immediately, a device woven with the archaic symbology of the council's authority. They paraded her through the grand halls, stripping her of her titles and forcing her into menial servitude as a symbol of their collective dominance. The message was clear. No species, not even humans, could be allowed to ascend uncontested. The humiliation was methodical. The tasks assigned to her were designed to grind her spirit. She served drinks to those who had once groveled for her audience. She cleaned the chambers where she had delivered speeches that shaped empires. They assumed she would break, that she would wither under the weight of public disgrace. But Ava was not calculating her escape. She was calculating their collapse. Even in chains, she observed. The council's unity was facade, and beneath it, fault lines spidered through every relationship. Alliances that seemed unshakable were riddled with distrust. Economic dependencies had become weapons waiting to be fired. The species that once operated in concert were bound by centuries of grudges, suppressed only by the balance of power Ava had once maintained. They believed removing her would restore their control. They had failed to understand that by enslaving her, they had planted the seed of their own destruction. She learned their routines, the way the Renari guards changed shifts, the coded gestures of Kalari used to signal hidden transactions, the micro-expressions that betrayed Ventari lies. She committed every detail to memory, weaving an intricate map of vulnerabilities. They treated her as invisible, a defeated relic of a miscalculated species, and in doing so, they handed her the keys to their downfall. Ava found ways to embed coded messages into the mundane. A misplaced cup, a subtly altered seating arrangement, an innocuous cleaning schedule, all channels to transmit information. She contacted Earth through patterns no one else could decipher, patterns dismissed as meaningless by those too arrogant to question them. The humans received her signals, understanding that Ava was not asking for rescue. She was giving orders. Earth's response was cold and silent. They ceased all communication with the Council. Their ambassadors vanished. Human corporations severed ties with galactic markets. Joint military exercises were abruptly canceled. The humans did not issue demands or ultimatums. They simply disappeared from the political landscape, leaving a vacuum that the Council struggled to interpret. Trade routes where humans played pivotal roles began to destabilize. Key materials failed to arrive on schedule. Financial systems relying on human banks suffered inexplicable failures. Entire sectors faced shortages. Supply chains fractured, and no explanation sufficed. The Council searched for culprits among themselves, too blind to see the origin. Ava, still bound by the collar they had forced upon her, continued her service with flawless precision. She remained obedient, never showing defiance, never betraying the calculations unfolding behind her eyes. She sowed paranoia among the species that had conspired against her, feeding small, precise fragments of information that ignited suspicion. The Kalari accused the Ventari of secret pacts. The Ventari blamed the Threxian for sabotage. Alliances unraveled as trust decayed. The first sign of true fear came when a Kalari freighter, carrying rare metals critical to their starship construction, vanished. Sensor logs were corrupted. Navigation data was inexplicably erased. The ship was never found. Other disappearances followed. Convoys rerouted into dead space. Fleets stranded by navigational anomalies that defied explanation. The losses accumulated with surgical precision, always just enough to destabilize, but never enough to provoke open war. Species that once celebrated Ava's downfall began to question whether her enslavement had unleashed something far worse than her freedom ever could. Rumors spread that humans had activated ancient technologies, that Earth was orchestrating a silent war beneath the Council's notice. No evidence supported these claims, yet the rumors persisted, gaining weight as the collapses compounded. Ava remained silent. She offered no insight, no protest, no plea for freedom. She served as required, her posture impeccable, her silence impenetrable. The weight of their decision began to press upon the Council. The economic collapses reached critical sectors. Insurrections flared on distant worlds where human advisors had previously maintained order. The Council dispatched envoys to Earth, seeking dialogue, but their messages were returned unopened. The silent war progressed with precision no Council member could track or contain. Ava Drake, bound in the role of a servant, maneuvered through the decaying halls of power, her steps deliberate. Her mind executing strategies Earth had begun deploying the moment her message reached them. The humans did not amass fleets or issue threats. They wielded patience like a weapon, and Ava was her sharpened edge, embedded deep within the center of galactic authority. The first collapse struck the Kalari's financial systems, a meticulously designed failure. Human proxies destabilized critical trade hubs by manipulating currencies, bankrupting entire sectors, without firing a single projectile. The Kalari, once the architects of the law that enslaved Ava, scrambled to contain the collapse. Their desperate pleas for assistance from other Council species were met with silence or conditional offers engineered by human-aligned intermediaries who emerged at the perfect moment. Ava's coded instructions had already seeded these intermediaries in the right markets, controlling outcomes long before the Kalari understood the scale of their mistake. The Ventari, sensing weakness, exploited the Kalari's vulnerability, attempting to seize their trade routes and mineral rights under the guise of stabilization. But the humans anticipated this, orchestrating diplomatic chaos through a series of rapid, untraceable communications that exposed secret Ventari dealings with black market syndicates. A torrent of legal actions followed, flooding the Council's courts with accusations, contract breaches, and demands for reparations. None of it pointed directly to humans, but every thread, when unraveled, led to a dead end carefully constructed by Ava's remote operatives. Human corporations had quietly consolidated influence over key supply chains before the Council ever realized the magnitude of their exposure. Critical resources such as medical nanites, rare fuel components, and advanced computing cores all began to flow through human-controlled channels. As supplies dwindled, Council species turned on each other, negotiating access to dwindling reserves while humans controlled every pivot point from the shadows. Throughout the escalating crises, Ava remained silent, serving, observing, and manipulating through the smallest, seemingly irrelevant details. She adjusted delivery schedules, redistributed assignments, and ensured that key council members were always positioned to overhear precisely what she wanted them to hear. Disinformation campaigns took root, each perfectly tailored to exploit ancient rivalries, reigniting dormant hostilities at precisely the right moments. The Threxian warlords, eager to reclaim territories they had once forfeited under Ava's peace accords, found themselves encouraged by anonymous intelligence reports suggesting their old enemies were preparing invasions. These reports, manufactured and leaked by human intelligence, led to preemptive Threxian strikes that shattered remaining alliances. The council chamber, once the seat of diplomatic unity, descended into a theater of accusations and betrayal. Council sessions became dominated by arguments and urgent appeals for stability. Proposals to free Ava were repeatedly introduced, but each attempt was mired in legal traps laid by human lawyers who operated with ruthless precision. The council's bureaucracy had become a maze with no exit. For every motion passed to reverse Ava's status, another regulation, cross-filed and time-locked by human intermediaries, would surface to delay, obstruct, or nullify the process. Human silence remained deafening. No emissaries returned to the council chambers. No envoys answered hails. No protests were filed. The humans simply vanished, leaving the council to crumble under the weight of their own decision. Council members dispatched fleets to find human territories, only to discover that Earth's colonies had quietly gone dark, their communication hubs deactivated, their trade stations abandoned. Humans had withdrawn fully, yet their influence remained embedded, strangling the council's infrastructure from within. Ava, still in chains, became a symbol of escalating dread. Her presence haunted the council's crumbling authority. They could not free her without admitting catastrophic error, and they could not bear to keep her as a servant while the galaxy burned around them. The most powerful species debated in desperation, seeking ways to restore their dominance, but Ava's orchestration left them no path forward. The internal conflicts that erupted across council territories escalated beyond containment. Fringe species, long excluded from council power, began to rise. The Atarans, once a minor voice, suddenly found themselves in possession of critical technologies that had been gifted quietly by human hands. Their rapid territorial expansion destabilized entire sectors. The Gravac Consortium, a merchant alliance previously irrelevant, suddenly controlled vital trade corridors, having acquired exclusive rights through backdoor agreements initiated by Earth's agents. Each ascendant power owed their rise to silent human support, all coordinated through Ava's subtle directives. Attempt to militarize against these new players failed. The Council's fleets, while still intact, began suffering from unexplained mechanical failures. Power systems shorted inexplicably. Navigation systems misaligned, sending vessels off course. Entire squadrons vanished into the void, their last transmissions garbled, their fates unknown. Sabotage was suspected, but inspections revealed no culprits. The ships were perfect before deployment and crippled upon activation. Only Ava knew the source. Human-engineered latent flaws, designed years in advance, now remotely triggered as part of the unfolding strategy. Council members scrambled to hire mercenaries, but even the most brutal fleets refused the contracts. Payment in council credits was worthless. The human-induced market collapse rendered their currency effectively extinct. Mercenaries had shifted allegiance to human-controlled syndicates who paid in stable currencies and provided advanced weaponry on the condition that no action be taken against human interests. The mercenaries had learned quickly which side truly controlled the galaxy. Species that had once paraded Ava's enslavement now sent desperate messages to Earth, offering concessions, trade privileges, and unconditional surrender in exchange for stability. Every message was returned unanswered. Ava continued her duties, perfectly obedient, entirely silent, her restraint more terrifying than any human battleship could have been. Political assassinations began surfacing among the Council's highest tiers. The deaths were surgical, each carefully timed to destabilize key factions. Investigations always led to dead ends, trails that vanished into the intricate web of galactic bureaucracy that humans had flooded with fabricated records and untraceable aliases. Leaders who once voted confidently for Ava's enslavement now lived in constant fear, surrounded by redundant security layers that failed to prevent their eventual, inevitable removal. The Council's judiciary, once a mechanism of order, became so entangled in overlapping cases, appeals, and procedural blocks that it effectively ceased functioning. Species began abandoning the Council, preferring the merging human-aligned networks where trade flowed, laws held weight, and stability returned, provided they accepted human terms, quietly delivered through intermediaries.